The film opens with a group of pirates relaxing in the dense jungle of Una Una Island in Indonesia, presumably after completing a raid. One of them goes to relieve himself in the jungle and finds a helmet. Following this discovery, he ends up in a dark and ominous cave. His interest is piqued, and he goes inside to investigate. Obviously, something bad happens. He is dragged into a hole that leads nowhere. Next, the scene focuses on a group of people looking for something in the mines. The group includes a tycoon, his girlfriend, a Japanese scientist, a former military engineer, and some mercenaries. A low-ranking soldier inspects a World War II-era Japanese machine gun nest. While his henchman is inside the gun nest, the sergeant and other soldiers are outside. The tycoon who sponsored the project, Price, and his girlfriend, appear to be on vacation rather than on a dangerous mission. As soon as they hear screams from inside the mines, the soldiers immediately go on the defensive. However, it turns out to be a false alarm. The henchman was simply playing a prank with a skull found in the trench. Annoyed, Price rudely tells Sergeant Tino to keep a closer watch on his men. Tino, in an almost stern tone, tells the sergeant to stop his pranks. Price and scientist Rai go to check out the pile of guns inside the bunker. While they're checking around, the rest of the soldiers are playing pranks with the skull. While the others are waiting for Price, engineer Stanley asks Tino if he knows what Price is looking for, but Tino says he has no information and doesn't intend to find out. The engineer, who seems to be the only bearer of practicality in the group, says he always likes to get information about the basics and the salary when accepting a job. Stanley also mentions that he feels like someone is following them, probably due to the high pirate activity in the area. The group continues on into the jungle, and come across a defunct mine. The engineer tells them that it was a Dutch mine from the colonial era that was abandoned after the Japanese took over the country in 1942. Price further explains that it was later renovated to be used as a military bunker. Stanley asks Price if that's what they're looking for, and the industrialist confirms. The engineer announces that he has to check the bunker to see if it's safe to go in. There have been signs of seismic activity recently, indicating that the whole place might be unstable. He promises to finish the job in a few hours. Continuing his work, he asks Rai how she came to work with Price. The scientist admits she came for her research, which focuses on World War II and the nature and psychology of soldiers that allowed them to commit their heinous acts. Stanley states that it is easy to know how soldiers think. He explains that to get a soldier, one has to take a human being and rebuild them. You have to break them down to the core of their individual being and then rebuild them, changing something at their core. It could be duty or obedience, really anything that tells them that killing a person is their purpose. He concludes that soldiers are essentially weapons. Rai asks if he has any weapons, to which Stanley replies that he did at one point. Suddenly, the group comes under fire from a group of pirates. Finding no other place to hide, they resort to running inside the dead mine, despite the engineer not having finished investigating. The soldier running at the end fails to notice a grenade thrown behind him. The place bursts into flames. When the group regains consciousness after the explosion, they witness a horrifying sight as the radio communication breaks down. Stanley warns Tino that since the entrance is blocked, they must find another way out of the mine. He suggests they can dig deeper, but warns that there is no guarantee they will find another exit. The group debates when the engineer asks Price about the pirate attack and asks if it was really a coincidence. Price denies the claim that the pirate attack could have been because of him, as he insists that no one knows about what he is looking for. The engineer asks for more information about their mission. The frustrated industrialist eventually reveals that they have been sent to this specific location with Rai's help. In fact, he is looking for the Japanese military commander's treasure. Stanley loses his temper and refuses to believe in its existence. Price explains that even if the treasure is not in the Philippines, they may find something in the mine. Before their argument turns physical, Tino intervenes and tells them to focus on more important issues, such as finding a way out. The group agrees and heads deeper into the mine. As they are crossing a bridge, the lights around them suddenly turn on and a war propaganda song breaks through the intense silence. Everyone looks around in confusion, questioning this strange experience, as they had assumed the mine was an empty and deserted mine. Price suggests that the explosion may have triggered the power generator. Tino scoffs at this theory, but Price points out that there is no way anyone else could be inside the mine except them, as the entrance looked untouched. The engineer sees the situation differently, as this could indicate that there may be a way out of the mine. As they move further into the mine, the group finds countless bottles, suits made of dangerous substances, and some extremely disturbing photographs of subjects under experimentation. They find a room that Tino believes to be a communications center. Rai also finds maps on the walls. While they are busy examining the room, a sinister figure appears behind one of the soldiers. No one is aware of his presence except the sergeant. However, by the time he turns around and aims his gun at the intruder, the figure has disappeared. Rai explains that the map she was inspecting shows the mine and the markings belong to the 25th Area Army. This leads Price to believe that it is one of the Japanese commander's hideouts. Stanley accuses Price of hiding some information from the group, as the mine does not look like a normal bunker or bank vault. He also questions the photographs they received earlier. Despite Price's protests, Rai reveals that he had discovered that the mines were the operations center for Unit 731, a secret medical research unit that specialized in the development of biological and chemical warfare through deadly human experiments. This angers Tino and he asks why they did not tell him. Price's girlfriend, Su Ling, arrogantly says that it doesn't matter, because they were soldiers who got paid to do their job. Once again, an argument breaks out, with everyone blaming each other. One soldier asks about the experimenters' need for gold. Rai is unable to answer, as the records were incomplete, to which the soldier speculates that if gold really exists, the story of Unit 731 may have been fabricated to keep people away. As they delve deeper, they arrive at a bunker where Tino decides to split up so the wounded soldier can get some rest, the wrong move as usual. Price and Su Ling insist on accompanying Tino and the sergeant to find an alternate route and keep an eye on the commander's treasure. Rai, Stanley, and another soldier stay behind to take care of the wounded man, Ario. Rai asks Stanley why he left the army. He describes an incident in Afghanistan where, while out at night, he had a petty argument with a man who bumped into him and did not apologize. He smashed a bottle over the man's head, nearly killing him. This made Stanley realize in his own horror that he liked the feeling of bloodshed and killing. In another part of the mine, Tino and the others arrive at a room filled with cages. Price finds a helmet that belonged to Australian POWs. Tino asks if they were victims of the Japanese military's deadly experiments, but Price denies having any relevant information. Stanley asks Ri if Unit 731 is the main reason she joined Tycoon, and she confirms it. While resting, Ario suddenly senses a presence below him. As he stands up to look, a pair of hands grab him and pull him into a pit. The other three catch a glimpse of a mutant who escapes. Stanley asks Ri what the mutant is, but the scientist denies knowing anything about it. Shortly after, they jump into the pit in search of Ario. Below the bunker, Stanley and Ri find the body of a wounded soldier. His throat has been slit. Stanley consoles Rio as he is visibly distraught at the scene and tells him to keep going, as it's dangerous to stay there. They are so distracted that they don't notice the man in the gas mask until it's too late. He knocks the engineer unconscious and Rio screams in panic. Meanwhile, the other group reaches a room where they find notes and formulas for medical experiments. The door is seen closing slowly behind them. Jocko, the other soldier who jumped in after Rio, is grabbed by a mutant and thrown into a cave filled with corpses and human remains. Looking around in the cave, he finds the body of the pirate from the opening scene. Suddenly, he is attacked by several mutants coming from different directions. Although he manages to put up a tough fight, one of the mutants blinds him. Holding his gun tightly, he tries to continue the fight by using his sense of hearing, but he realizes there are too many mutants around him. He drops his gun and looks up, accepting his fate, only to be attacked by the mutants. Hearing Jocko's distant screams, the other group is alerted. They realize they are locked in. While the soldiers search for a way out of the room, Price is attacked by a mutant who has somehow climbed up from beneath the ground. He stabs Price's left shoulder with a bone. Tino quickly shoots at the mutant, but he appears to be immune to the bullets. Enraged, the mutant attacks Tino, knocking him to the ground and punching him violently. It is only stopped when one of his henchmen grabs a broken metal shelf and hits the mutant with it, killing him. Stanley wakes up to war propaganda playing in the background. He wakes up to find a man in a gas mask looming over him with a sword. He tells Rai in Japanese, which Rai translates to Stanley, that they are now prisoners of the Japanese Imperial Army. Rai tells him that the man considers them enemies of the Allies. She insists that the war is over, but naturally, the man doesn't listen to her. At the same time, Stanley attacks the man and manages to take off his mask, revealing his face to be much older. Rai doesn't give up and tries to convince the man again that the war is indeed over, and shows him archival footage on her tablet. The man loses control upon seeing the footage. He falls to his knees in front of a corpse covered with a Japanese flag. The man in the gas mask then tells Rai and Stanley his story. He was one of 2 soldiers posted to guard the mine during the war, but when the Japanese army surrendered and left in 1945, they were locked inside. His partner expressed his desire to surrender, resulting in his death at the hands of the masked man. Rai and Stanley also discover that the mutants are actually former prisoners of war. The Japanese army had experimented on them with gas, causing them to transform. Later, they discovered a new process which they used on their own soldiers. The masked man and his companion were also injected with a chemical that kept them young and fit, but it was a failed experiment. Stanley thinks the man in the gas mask is the last of his kind, but he is soon proven wrong. The man says that the experiment perfected the formula, which was passed on to the best soldiers, the Imperial Guards. Meanwhile, Tino finds a tattoo written in Japanese on the mutant's head. Price translates it as Australian, 24 years old, further confirming that the mutants were in fact prisoners of war. He also speculates that it may be Unit 731's experiments. Abandoning the idea of opening the door they came from, they go to another room where they see a corpse in the middle of an experiment with stitches all over its body and scalp and the skull wide open. Price finds a syringe filled with an exotic chemical laced with gold particles, which was the substance used for the experiments. He is disheartened when he realizes that his trip may have been in vain if this is the last of the commander's treasures. Su Ling asks Price why the chemical was mixed with gold, to which he replies that gold is believed to be the ancient elixir of life and the basis of alchemy. Su Ling thinks that if the mixture inside the syringe can turn the soldiers into those mutants, it must be more valuable than the commander's treasure. Price tells his girlfriend to keep the syringe safe for him. Tino and his henchmen manage to open the door on the other side of the room, but there they find hundreds of figures dressed in samurai garb, seemingly asleep, the perfect mutant soldiers, the Imperial Guard. The soldiers wake up and rush towards them, unmindful of Tino and the others' attempts to stop them. Tino orders Price, and Su Ling to head towards a grate that leads them to a drainage system. The henchman stays behind to give them a chance to escape, but is unfortunately killed. The group reaches the cave where Tino finds Jocko's corpse. The injured Tino is attacked by another mutant in the cave, and after a fierce scuffle, he kills him with a bone. The group eventually reunites with Stanley and Rai. While Tino and Stanley are discussing whether or not the man in the gas mask is trustworthy, Su Ling, in an attempt to save Price, stabs him with a syringe containing an experimental mixture. Just then, the royal guards catch up to them. Everyone tries to escape, but the masked man stays and gives his life to foil the Japanese army. The failed mutant can be seen kneeling in front of the guards, perhaps pledging loyalty. While the guards are chasing the group, they struggle to open a door. While the others are fighting the mutants, Su Ling manages to open the door and get Price inside and locks the rest of the group outside. She finds a tunnel that the mutants use to enter and exit the mine, but unfortunately she fails to escape. The effect of the formula has turned Price into a mad, delirious mutant who bangs his head against a wall. The other group is still inside the mine, pursued by the royal guards. They break into a door and find a drainage system. Here too, Tino stays behind to hold off the guards so he can help Ri and Stanley escape. He tries to fight but is killed instantly. Now the last 2 end up in the water, and Ri finds a grate that leads outside. Before Stanley can reach the grate, a royal guard jumps into the water right next to him. Ri is the only one who manages to escape from the dead mine and finds herself in the middle of a lake. She swims towards the shore. Unfortunately, a royal guard emerges from the water and charges towards the unlucky scientist. Ri tries to fight him one last time. As he grabs her by the throat, she sees more guards emerge from the lake. The film ends with the royal guard swinging his katana,